We are in Korach. Now, traditionally, Korach is a bad, it's a bad stuff happens in Korach. So usually bad stuff happens in congregations during Korach. However, we are going to continue looking at what I'm so lit about from last week, which was Saudi Arabia and Kadesh. And that they've got all the maps wrong. That Kadesh is in Saudi Arabia, or Jordan, Lower Jordan, Upper Saudi Arabia. And it changes everything. It changes the entire narrative of the Bible. It changes everything. Just like the real Mount Sinai is not in the Sinai Peninsula, the quote Sinai Peninsula, because that's Egypt. And Mount Sinai, it says in Galatians, is in Arabia, not in Egypt. So this is a big deal, the biggest deal that I've felt since we found out about the real Mount Sinai in Arabia. And we got a big, huge map 15 years ago when we found out about the real Mount Sinai. I had this big, giant aeronautical map of Saudi Arabia. We spent 3 weeks going over every tiny detail of that to look at the Exodus route and all that sort of thing. Well, that was 15 years ago. Now, I'm back in Saudi Arabia, and I'm going to tell you in a little bit why this is such a big deal. Before we get to Saudi Arabia, we have to look at where they are, and we have to look at the Torah portion story, the narrative in the Torah portion. So go to Numbers chapter 16, and we're going to read about the bad guy named Korach. It's not Korah, it's Korach. And I've got most of it written up on the board, but not all of it. So it'd be better if you can follow along in the Bible. Oh, one last thing. Can somebody get my glasses? I brought them in the box. Okay, Numbers chapter 16. Now Korach, son of Izhar, son of Kahat. Kahat, most Bibles translate it as Kohath. But it's not Kohath, it's Kahat. And he was, thank you, the family of the priests. So this bad guy, the first thing we see about him is he's a priest. He's from the family, from the son of Kahat, ben Levi. And certain Reubenites, Datan and Aviram, sons of Eliab, and On, son of Reuben. Now, Datan, Aviram, and On are from the tribe of Reuben, and Korach is from the tribe of Levi. They rose up before Moshe, together with some of the sons of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation. These are leaders. These aren't just, schluffs. These are big guys, chosen in the assembly, men of renown. They assembled together against Moshe and Aharon and said to them, "You've gone far enough, because all the congregation are holy." Moses was the one who told them that all the congregation was holy, wasn't he? At Mount Sinai, he said, "You are all a holy nation, a kingdom of priests." Moses was the one who told them that, and now they're saying, "We are all holy." Well, he was the one who told them that. Every one of them, and the Lord is in their midst. So why do you exalt yourself above the assembly of the Lord? Do this, take fire pans. Now this word machteh, fire pan, some of the Bibles translate it censer, which is not a good translation. It is a fire pan, and in a while I'm going to show you a picture of it. Take fire pans for yourselves, Korach and all your company, and put fire in them and lay incense on them in the presence of the Lord tomorrow. And the man whom the Lord chooses, that one is holy. You've gone far enough, you sons of Levi. So it's not just Korach. It's a whole bunch of Levites, which you're going to see. Then Moshe said to Korach, "Listen now, you sons of Levi. Is it not enough for you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself, to do the service of the Mishkan of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister to them? And that he has brought you near, and all your brothers, sons of Levi, with you. And are you seeking for the priesthood also?" So when he says, "Are you seeking for the priesthood?" he's talking to the Levites. Bunch of Levites. Then Moshe sent a summons to Datan and Abiram. We're in chapter 16, verse 12 now. Datan and Abiram and the sons of Eliab, but they said, "We will not come up. Is it not enough that you brought us up out of the land flowing with milk and honey to have us die in the wilderness, but you want to lord it over us too? Indeed, you have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, And you haven't given us an inheritance of fields and vineyards. Would you put out the eyes of these men? We will not come up. Moshe said to Korach, you and all your company be present. Now, I'm just skipping through here because this story there's a lot more in the story, but I'm putting the salient points that I want to show you, want to talk about and make clear. You and all your company be present before the Lord tomorrow, both you and they along with Aaron. Each of you take his fire pan and put incense on it, and each of you bring his fire pan before the Lord, 250 fire pans. Also you and Aharon, each with his fire pan. It says it 4 times. It says the word machteh, or fire pan, 4 times. So it's not censer, it's fire pan. Now here's a picture of it. This is one of the priests there in the Temple Institute in Jerusalem. They've reinstituted all the stuff for the priesthood. And they've remade all the vessels, almost all the vessels. They've also done the clothing, the beged ivri, the clothing of the priests. And this is a model that's in the Temple Institute in Jerusalem. And he's wearing the actual priest, not high priests, regular priest garments, and he's holding a fire pan. Look how big that is. It's a big old shovel. And you put live coals on it, you put incense on it, and the aroma of the incense wafts through the tabernacle. And he says, all of you, 250 fire pans. 250 of them, plus Aaron. So there's a lot of fire pans. So they each took his fire pan, and they stood at the doorway of the tent of meeting with Moshe and Aharon. Thus Korach assembled all the congregation against them at the doorway of the tent of meeting. So we're talking about 1 million people. Listen to me. Korach influenced like 1 million people to come against Moses and Aaron. And you got 250 guys with fire pans, and they're saying, we're not afraid, basically. And then the last thing, and the glory of the Lord appeared to all the congregation. So now they're all there at the Mishkan, and the volcano starts, and the glory of the Lord shows up, and they're still not scared, is what you're going to see. Now this is the camp of Israel, the way it was set up, north, south, east, and west, and the tabernacle, just like the temple in Jerusalem, faces east. The back side is west, and then you have north and south. And in Numbers chapter 1, 2, and 3, God sets up how he wants the tribes set up. And he's got, starting with Judah first on the east, Judah, Zebulun, Issachar on the east, and then the north, then the south, Gad, Reuben, and Shimeon under the banner of Reuben, and then the west, Manasseh, Ephraim, Benjamin under the banner of Ephraim, and then the north, last, is Dan, Asher, Naphtali under the banner of Dan. But around the tabernacle are other camps, Gershon, Merari, and Kahat. Gershon and Merari are the Levites, and Kahat are the priests. And then in the front, on the east side, is Moses and Aaron's camp. This is, 200, 300, 400, 500 people. It doesn't mean like, 2 tents. It's lots of tents, lots of people. We're talking about over 1 million people now. So this is the way the tents are set up in their camps. Then the Lord spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to all the congregation, saying, get back from among the dwellings of Korach, Datan, and Abiram. From the dwellings of Korach, he's a priest, and Datan and Abiram, and On. What tribe is Datan, Abiram, and On from? I'm asking questions now. Huh? No. Korach was from one family, and Datan, Abiram, and On are from another family. What family are they from? You forgot already. Look at verse 1 of the story. Korach, son of Yitzhar, son of Kahat, blah, blah, blah. Datan and Aviram, sons of Eliav, and On, sons of Reuben. Got it? So we have two tribes involved in this rebellion. You have the sons of Levi and the priests with Kahat, and then what tribe? Reuben. Look how they're set up. Yeah. Now I'm going to start preaching. I'm going to preach, baby. Kahat, the priest camp, is directly across on the same side of this enormous camp. Probably 20 miles by 20 miles. It's huge. Of Reuben. Proximity is a huge problem. You know how all those verses that we hate in Proverbs that say, don't hang around with bad people, don't go drinking with bad people, don't hang out with bad people because it will influence you, and we're so stupid we go, we're not going to be influenced, we're stronger than that. And every time we get influenced, this is why. Proximity is important. Who you hang out with is important. Who you talk to is important. Who you spend your time with is important. If you're there with people and you're light and their darkness, shine your light. Don't let their darkness suck you into their darkness, because it happens, I don't know, 70, 80% of the time. Reuben and Kahat are in proximity to each other. So who do you think influenced who? Do you think Kahat started it and spread it to Reuben, or Reuben started it and spread it to Kahat? Who does Moses rail against? Who does he say, how dare you to? Who does he say that to? Huh? The priests and the Levites. It started here. It started with the priests and it spread to Reuben. Just because of proximity, probably. They hang out together. All right, so enough said about that. Now let's go to verse 26. Well, 25. Then Moshe arose and went to Datan and Abiram with the elders of Israel following him, and he spoke to the congregation, saying, get away from the tents of these wicked men, and touch nothing that belongs to them. So they got back from around the dwellings of Korach, Datan and Abiram, and Datan and Abiram came out and stood at the doorway of their tents. So we know where they are. Datan and Abiram are here, in the tribe of Reuben. And they're standing at the doorway of their tents, along with their wives and their sons and their babies. And Moshe said, by this you will know that the Lord has sent me to do all these deeds, for it's not me doing it. If these men die the death of all men, the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord brings about a brand new thing, and the ground opens its mouth and swallows them up, along with everything that is theirs, and they descend alive into Sheol, then you will know that these men have spurned the Lord. Now this is weird. It says, swallows them up with all that is theirs. Well, what if you're in the camp of Shimeon and you've borrowed a needle and thread from On's wife or Datan's wife? Well, that's in the camp of Shimeon. What if you've borrowed an oxen and 4 carts from Reuben, from Datan and Abiram, and you're in Judah? So here's what the rabbis say. They say that when the earth opened up, it's like gravity increased, and all the stuff that belonged to Datan and Abiram rolled down into the pit that opened up, because it belonged to Datan and Abiram. I don't know if that's true, but I think it's cool. Everything that belonged to Datan and Abiram went into the ground with them. So if that happens, then you will know that these men have spurned the Lord. And the ground that was beneath them split open, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up and their households, and all the men that belonged to Korach with all their possessions. There it is again, all their possessions. So if anything was borrowed from Korach here in Kahat, and went to any of the other tribes, that also rolled up into the hole and got swallowed up along with Datan, Abiram, and Kahat. Verse 33, so they and all that belonged to them went down alive into hell, or Sheol, and the earth closed back over them, and they perished from the midst of the assembly. Now you think the story is over. It ain't over. It gets worse. Way, 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 way worse. before we go on, where are they? Where is the camp of Israel? Where's the camp of Israel at this time? All right, let's back up. Where was the camp of Israel, last Torah portion in Shalach, when they sent out the 12 apostles? In Kadesh. And they came back with a bad report to where? To where? I'm asking you now. To where? Say it out loud. Kadesh. Say it out loud. Okay, so they're in Kadesh. Well, bad stuff is continuing to happen in Kadesh. They are in Kadesh. In Saudi Arabia. In Jordan. Upper Saudi Arabia. Western Jordan. Verse 34. All Israel who were around them fled at their outcry, for they said, the earth may swallow us up. Fire also came forth from the Lord and consumed the 250 men who were offering the incense. So now fire comes down from God, burns up the 250 men, and it's going to get worse. It's not over. Verse 41, the next day, all the congregation of the sons of Israel humbled themselves, went to Moshe, kissed his hand, and said, oh, please forgive us. No. They got mad, they grumbled, saying, you're the ones who caused the death of God's holy people. So now they're blaming the whole thing on Moses and Aaron. It came about when the congregation had assembled against Moshe and Aharon that they turned toward the tent of meeting, and again, the tornado of fire, the volcano starts, and God shows up. And do you think that scares them? Yes. This time they get scared. But it's too late. It's too late. The Lord spoke to me, the end of 44. The Lord spoke to Moshe, get away from this congregation that I may consume them. Now what he means is he's going to kill all of Israel. The whole quote, church. Remember the word edut or kahal is the same word translated in the New Testament as church. It's the word congregation. So I'm going to say it like that. So I can destroy the entire church. And Moshe falls on his face, and Aaron falls on his face, and they pray, and God, please don't kill them. If you kill them, all the nations will look and they'll say, you couldn't bring them into the land. And it will be worse than what we got now. And so God says, all right, I won't destroy them. In verse 46, Moshe said to Aaron, take your fire pan and put fire up from the altar and lay incense, then bring it quickly to the congregation and make atonement for them because the plague now there's a plague. Now there's a plague. He took his stand between the living and the dead so that the plague was checked. Those who died by the plague were 14,700, besides those who died on account of Korach. Then Aharon returned to Moshe at the doorway of the tent of meeting because the plague had been checked. So we got Korach, Datan, Aviram, and On, that's 4 guys, plus 250 men, that's 254, plus 14,700 were consumed by the plague, that's 14,954, plus the families, and we have no idea how many that is. So conservatively, 15,000 people died because of this. 15,000 people, that's a small town. That's a big town, a small city. And they all died because they're in Kadesh. The whole thing happened because they're in Kadesh. So we're going to review from last week. This was one of the, in my opinion, one of the best teachings I've ever gotten. And I have to give props where they're due, which is, was it Stephen Rudd? Rebecca? I think it was Stephen Rudd. I think he's a Gentile. And he's got all these teachings on the internet, and one of them is about the real place of Kadesh. Where's Kadesh really? I had no clue, and the reason is this. I never let my mind go to the eastern side of the river, Jordan. Never. Because, from all the maps that the world has created, they've got all the activity taking place, from the Exodus on, of biblical history, taking place straight up from Egypt through the Sinai Peninsula up into Israel. And they never crossed the border except to talk about Gad, Manasseh, and Reuben, who had land on the other side of the river. That's it. So I never let my mind go over there because you know why? The Arabs are over there. The Arabs. Because it's Arabia. Who needs that? And then I look at all the maps, and all the maps kept my mind where it was. Well, now I'm fascinated because I'm now on the other side of the river. So we're going to review. This is just a review. If you want to know the whole thing, you got to get the video from last week. You got to look at it. It's on YouTube, on our Tzion channel, and it's SELA from last week. So let's review. Exodus 19:1. They travel from Egypt, go through the Reed Sea to Sinai. They arrive at Sinai on 3/3, Sivan 3. They stay there for 11 months, 10 days. We know that because the scriptures say in Numbers 10:13, leave Sinai on 2/20. So from 3 to 2, the next year it's 11 months. 3/3 to 2/20, the next year is 11 months, 10 days. So they're at Sinai. They're not there for 40 days and 40 nights. They're there for 11 months, almost a year, 11 months and 10 days. Then they travel from Sinai, which is not here in Egypt. This is all Egypt. Biblically, this is Egypt. It's just another chunk of Egypt. So the maps are all wrong that have Mount Sinai here in the Sinai Peninsula. They even call it the Sinai Peninsula because of this deception. Constantine's mother, Queen Helene, was the one who said that this was the mountains where Mount Sinai is. And they all went, okay. But there were church fathers who said, no, that's not correct. Eusebius being one of them. And he recorded that no, Mount Sinai is down here in Arabia at Jabal al-Laws, which is the mountain of the law, Jabal al-Laws. So it's a long way from Israel way down to Mount Sinai in Arabia. It's down with the Midianites. So they travel from Sinai. It says in Deuteronomy 1, it should have been 11 days to get to Kadesh. It should have been 11 days. How long did it take them? 11 months, right. They travel for 11 months from Mount Sinai up through the wilderness of Paran, the wilderness of Zin, Kadesh. We're given 3 different words to tell us where they are. The wilderness of Paran, the wilderness of Zin, and Kadesh. And it says it takes them 11 months. It should have taken 11 days. We're even told the camps, Taberah, Kibrot HaTa'ava, Chatzerot, where Miriam dies. And those are going this way. Then it should be, then at that point in the narrative, we should be at Numbers 20, verse 1. And here's the whole problem. Here's why the whole world got this wrong. Because he picks up the narrative several chapters later in chapter 20. Because you're in Numbers chapter 11 when Miriam dies, and you're already at Kadesh. And then you go through all these things happening, like this week, Korach. And then you don't get back to the narrative of Kadesh until chapter 20. So there's this view in most of the world that says Israel went from Sinai, and I'll even put Mount Sinai down here, and they went to Kadesh, which the world says is here. And then they went back wandering in the wilderness, and then they went back to Kadesh later on in chapter 20. Absolutely untrue. And we know this is not Kadesh. Why? Because it's in the biblical border of Israel. It's within the biblical border of Israel. And he says they went to the wilderness of Paran, outside Israel, and they wandered in that wilderness. The wilderness of Paran, the wilderness of Zin. Right? Not in Israel. But Kadesh, Barnea, which they put on the maps here, is inside the biblical border of Israel. It's right on the edge of the modern border of Israel, not biblical. Not the biblical border. So they've got this whole thing wrong. Which means they put all the stuff around Kadesh here in Egypt, in the Sinai Peninsula, including Edom, the wilderness of Paran, the wilderness of Zin, all of it they put here because it's near Kadesh. It's all wrong. It's over on this side of the river and that side of the border, outside the borders of Israel. Okay, again, if you want to really know about all this, you gotta get the teaching from last week. Okay, that's good. And then in Numbers 13, it says they're at the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. God sends out the 12 apostles, not spies. Do they spy out the land?
No.
What do? Measure it or cord it. They measure it or they drop a line around the land, and they're in Kadesh. And they go from Kadesh into Israel, and they come back to Kadesh. And they give the bad report. That was last week's Torah portion. And now, we have them at Kadesh, sending out the 12 apostles, and God judges. Now, when I say God judges, it's a big deal. On the 9th of Av, God said, you are not entering the land of Israel. You're doomed to stay, to be, not wander, to be in the wilderness for 40 years total. He does not say you're doomed to wander the wilderness. He says you're doomed to be in the wilderness. They stayed put. They stayed put for 38 years. And this was the whole huge revelation that I'm still kind of freaked out about. I've been told my whole life the Jews wandered for 40 years in the wilderness, right?
Yeah.
Totally wrong. They wandered in the wilderness for 11 months, and then they stayed in Kadesh for 38 years, and then they wandered in the wilderness for 11 months again. And that's it. They only wandered for less than 2 years. And the rest of the time they stayed put in Kadesh, and all the bad stuff happened that happened in the wilderness. Because we know what the wilderness is. The wilderness is Paran and the wilderness is Zin. And we know where they are. They're at Kadesh. Near Edom. And it says in the Bible there, at Edom. Well, Edom's over here. It's not over here in Egypt. It's over here in what's called Jordan and Saudi Arabia. That's Edom. Okay. Hopefully your mind is starting to go over toward the other side of the river now. Just starting. I'm going to get you there. Don't worry. So these are all the bad things that happened at Kadesh. The 12, what were sent out? What were sent out? Apostles were sent out. Came back with that report, except for 2 of them. The rebellion of Korach this week. Then Aaron's authority is proven because they're rising up again against Aaron. Then Miriam dies there. Then Moses strikes the rock and he names the place Meribah. Say Meribah. And it's called Meribat Kadesh, which means it happened in Kadesh. But years earlier, there was another Meribah. When Moses struck the rock, that giant rock split in half, water poured out to water Israel, and this happened at Rephidim, right by Mount Sinai. I mean, it's 3 miles from that rock to the camp of Mount Sinai. That's in the camp, basically, within the camp of Mount Sinai. Only it's on the other side of, it's on the other side of Mount Sinai. It's on the other side. It's on the western side. Camp was on the eastern side, but it's still right there, right at Mount Sinai. And he named it, Moshe named it Meribah. And then they travel up to Kadesh, and he names it, because the same thing happens, he names it Meribat Kadesh. So there's two places named Meribah, because they fought against God twice when water came out of the rock. Twice. Two different rocks, except it's not two different rocks. But it is two different rocks. It says in 1 Corinthians 10 that the rock that gave them water followed them in the wilderness. What wilderness? Zin and Paran. And there's another wilderness down here called the wilderness of Sinai, where Mount Sinai is. So far we got 3 wildernesses in which this rock, now I don't know what this means, but it says the rock followed them and gave them water. So that means it followed them somehow, magically, spiritually. I don't know what this means. But the same rock that gave them water, which was Yeshua, was down at Mount Sinai, gave them water, and then up at Kadesh and gave them water. This is a picture. Are you with me so far? Okay, so right now we're just getting caught up. Then Edom denies them passage, and they stay put at Kadesh. And then we found out last week that Moab, then they requested passage around Moab or through Moab, and Moab said no. So at that point, they left Kadesh and they went up into Israel, a few months' journey. All right. There was 18 camps to get from Sinai up to Kadesh. There are only 9 camps from Kadesh up to when they go into the land of Israel. All right, now we're caught up. So what we have is this. We have that the Jews stayed at Kadesh, at the wilderness of Zin and the wilderness of Paran for 38 years. All right. I told you last week, they're the only wildernesses listed in the Bible, in the Torah. Did anybody check me on that? No? I did. I checked myself. I checked myself. And there's one more that we have to add. I was wrong. There's one more we have to add. So I went through every single verse in the Torah that says wilderness. And every one of them is wilderness of Zin, or wilderness of Paran, or wilderness of Sinai. And we know where these are. Wilderness of Zin, a little bit south, wilderness of Paran, a little bit south, wilderness of Sinai, in which is Sinai. Now, do you guys know what Sinai means? Do you know what Sinai means? Anybody? No? You don't remember? Thorn bush. A sin is a thorn bush. So there are other passages that say the wilderness of Sin, S-I-N, that's Sinai. That's the wilderness of Sinai. It's the same one. Because it's the same word, thorn bush. So don't get thrown when it says, oh, it's the wilderness of Sin. That's different. It's not different. Same one. So we have one more that we have to add. In Exodus 15:22, when they leave Egypt and they go on the Exodus route and they cross the Reed Sea and they go down to Mount Sinai, they go through one other wilderness. And it tells us exactly where it is. It says, the wilderness of Shur from the Reed Sea by Elim, which is going to Arabia. Elim is right here, right by the Reed Sea in Arabia. So they cross the Reed Sea, they go to the wilderness of Shur and Elim, where there are 70 palms and all that sort of thing. That stuff happens. So, other than that, the only other wildernesses are Sinai, Paran, and Zin. They did not wander in the wilderness for 40 years. They stayed in the wilderness, specific wilderness, for 38. What's the specific wilderness? The one that said the most? No, the wilderness of... No, Zin is only mentioned a couple times. What's the one that said over and over and over? Paran. The wilderness of Paran is the big one. That's the one that is linked most often with Kadesh. Only 2 or 3 times does it say the wilderness of Zin linked with Kadesh. You can see that in Numbers 13:21. Zin, Numbers 20 verse 1. Zin, Numbers 27:14. Those are the ones that list Zin. Also, you see what Kadesh. So the other ones are all Paran, and Sinai. And then Shur. And that's it. So, if you know that they're at Kadesh and all this bad stuff happens because God cursed them and says, you will not enter the land for 40 years. You're going to be stuck in that wilderness for 40 years because you had no what? Say it loud. Say it loud. Faith. They had no understanding, no emunah, no firmness, no amen, no firmness, no foundation. And because they couldn't see the land, which is not a land, which is a day, God said, I'm cursing you and you are stuck here to drop dead in this wilderness. You with me so far? Amen. You with me so far? Amen. Okay. Let's go to Deuteronomy 1. The last passage is just to give you some proof texts about them staying in Kadesh. Yeah, this is a huge deal. We were wrong. For years and years and years, we were wrong. Deuteronomy 1:46. And the whole body of Messiah is wrong. And the Jews are wrong because they believe this too, that they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. 146. Well, 45. Then you returned and wept before the Lord, but the Lord did not listen to your voice nor give ear to you. So you stayed at Kadesh many days, the days that you spent. The days that you spent. The days that you wasted. How long did they waste their days? Well, how many years? Sorry. How many years did they? 40 years. They wasted 40 years. 38 to be sure. They wasted 40 years. And he says the days that they wasted were in, where? In Kadesh. In Kadesh. In that one town. Deuteronomy 2, verse 14. Now the time that it took for us to come from Kadesh Barnea until we crossed over the brook Zeded was 38 years, until all that generation of the men of war perished. So they stayed in Kadesh for 38 years, until everybody was dead. That whole generation was dead, and then they made this short trek north from Kadesh up to going into the land of Israel. Short trek. All right. We looked last week that Kadesh is the picture of unbelief, the ultimate picture of unbelief. I mean, have you ever heard that? Everybody talks about Jezebel, Cain, Korach even. Who else do they say is like ultimate unbelief? Nebuchadnezzar. Who else? What else is the ultimate picture of unbelief in the Bible that you've heard in the church? Thomas? No. Unbelief. Who's the ultimate? Haman? Come on, who are the bad guys? Judas? Who's the ultimate picture of unbelief?
Jezebel?
I said Jezebel. Wow, guys are not with it today. Come on, wake up. Nimrod, that's a good one. Okay, all those pale in comparison to Kadesh. Because, I mean, think about this. An entire, millions of people that God is dealing with as a group, millions of people. God said, you are not going to enter what? Rest. Thank you, Mary. You are not going to enter my rest. Which is what? The kingdom. The kingdom, the day of the Lord. And over 1 million people, you're not going to enter the day of the Lord. You are cursed. It's the ultimate picture of unbelief. Now, this is what the rabbis say, by the way. They say that entire generation, well, the way they say it is, will not go to heaven. That's the way they say it. They're right. The ultimate picture of unbelief, because all the bad stuff about Israel happened at Kadesh. All of it. All right, now, let's go to Hebrews chapter 3, 8. We're just going to review this. We looked at this last week. I haven't even started teaching yet. We're just reviewing. Hebrews 3, 8 through 4:11. We're just going to skitter through it. Verse 7. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your heart, as when they provoked me, as in the day of trial, actually the day of Meribah, in the wilderness. Which wilderness? Which wilderness? Starts with a P. Paran, where your fathers tried me by testing me and saw my works for 40 years. So I was angry with that generation and said, they always go astray in their heart. They didn't know my ways. So I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my menucha, my rest. Verse 13. Encourage one another day after day as long as it is still called today. Now today stretches for 6,000 years from creation to the day of the Lord. 6,000 years of man. That's today. Hayom, the day, today. And it stretches for all the time of man as long as it's still called today. Verse 15, he says it again. Today, if you hear his voice, don't harden your hearts as when they provoked me, for who provoked him when they heard. Indeed, did not all those who came out of Egypt, led by Moshe? So who was he angry with for 40 years? Wasn't it those who sinned, whose bodies fell in the wilderness? Which wilderness? Say it together. Paran. And to whom did he swear that they should not enter his rest? There it is again. But to those who were not submissive. It does not say disobedient. And so we see that they were not able to enter because of unbelief. Not able to enter what? Rest. What? Rest. Chapter 4, verse 3. For we who have believed enter that rest, just as he said, and he quotes it a third time. As I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest. Although his works were finished from the foundation of the world, which is a weird thing to say, for he has thus said somewhere concerning the seventh. That just sounds completely out of place, doesn't it? So now all of a sudden he's talking about Shabbat. For he has thus said somewhere concerning the seventh, and God rested on the seventh day from all his works. And again in this passage, they shall not enter my rest. So therefore, rest equals the seventh day. Since therefore, verse 6, since therefore it remains for some to enter it, enter what? Rest. Those who formerly had good news preached to them failed to enter it because they were not submissive. He again fixes a certain what? Day. Day. Yom, a day. And he says, today, saying through David after such a long time, it's still called today, just as has been said before. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. For if Joshua had given them rest, he would not have spoken of another what? Day. They were not looking for a land. They were supposed to be looking for a day. The day of the Lord, the kingdom, the Messianic kingdom. But they couldn't see it. It's the ultimate picture of unbelief. The ultimate picture of unbelief is not believing in the Lord Jesus Christ. It's not seeing the day of the Lord, the kingdom. That's unbelief. That's having no sight. Yeshua just gets you into it. But what does he get you into if you can't even see what it is? That's unbelief. We're not supposed to be trying to get people to believe in Jesus. We're supposed to be getting people to want to enter the kingdom. And how do they get into the kingdom but through the blood of Yeshua? Judaism, right. seeing Yeshua in Judaism. That's supposed to be the believer's focus. That's the ultimate picture of unbelief. They couldn't see the kingdom. Why? Because they were stuck in where? Where? Kadesh. In the wilderness of Paran. And God stuck them there and said, you're destined to die here. And you're never entering my rest. Okay. So that's the ultimate picture of unbelief. Now, I'm ready to start teaching. Now I'm ready to start teaching. That didn't take too long, did it? It's 12. Okay. On the dot. All right, so now we're ready to go. I'm going to get through this as fast as I can. In Acts chapter 7, 42 through 44, it's talking about this generation that was stuck in the wilderness. In where? No, not wilderness. In where? In Kadesh, in the wilderness of? All right, it's talking about that generation. And it says that they took along with them these demons. They had the sukkah of Kiyun. No, they had the house of Kiyun and the sukkah of Molech. These are demons that they had with them in Kadesh. In Kadesh. And they had the tabernacle. They had the tabernacle for 40 years in the wilderness, right? Which is the wilderness of Paran, which is Kadesh. So they had the tabernacle in Kadesh. And it's a town, it's a city. I'm going to show you. It's huge. And in this town, they also had these houses of demons. Houses. Sukkah, a little house of these demons. Now in Deuteronomy 22, this is very important. I taught this last year and I just listened to it. It was fantastic. I had completely forgotten about this teaching. In Deuteronomy 22, verse 9, it's talking about sha'atnez, separation. You don't mix stuff in Judaism. You shall not sow your vineyard with two kinds of seed, lest all the produce of the seed which you have sown and the increase of the vineyard, in other words, all your harvests from then afterwards, become, now my version says defiled. Does anybody else have a different word at the end of verse 9? Mine says defiled. Anybody else have a different word there? You got defiled? Anything else? Says what? Contaminated. Okay. Anything else? What is forbidden? All right. These are all wrong. You know what the word is? Kadesh. Kadesh. It's the same exact word that they named this place that they were living in. Don't take the vineyard of Judaism, in Judaism, or the vineyard of Judaism, and put other seed into it, or it will become Kadesh. Yeah? You with me? Okay, in the Bible, what is the vineyard a picture of? What two things?
The Jews.
The Jews in Isaiah chapter 5 and Yeshua in John chapter 15. I am the vine, right? Yeshua says, I am the vine in John 15, and in Isaiah 5 it says, you Israel are my vineyard. So the vineyard, the vine is Israel and it is Yeshua. They are the same, they talk the same, they look the same, they taste the same, they produce the same fruit. That's the way God set it up. And God has a vineyard, and he says, I don't want anybody to sow other seed into that vineyard. I'll give you an example. Christmas. I'll give you another example. Easter. I'll give you another example. Communion. I'll give you another example. Man, you don't know where my mind just went. I could give you 1,000 examples. All the paganism from Hellenism that has crept into the church This is a different seed. It is not the seed of God, which is Judaism. Any other seed is not supposed to go into that vineyard, or else it will become what? It will become what? Not defiled. Kadesh. Kadesh. Kadosh. Kadosh. Ruach HaKodesh. Spirit. Holy Spirit. Holy. Kadesh means holy. Well, it really means set apart. And it's set apart for good, or it's set apart for evil. And in this case, it is set apart for evil. And it is so specific that you are not going to like this. I just hinted at it last week. In Deuteronomy 23, verse 18, it says about Kadesh, you shall not bring the hire of a Kadesh or the wages of a dog into the house of the Lord. I'm in 23:18. You shall not bring the hire, the money of a Kadesh, or the wages of a dog. It doesn't mean a dog. It means a dog, a homosexual. Into the house of the Lord your God, for any vow, for both of these are an abomination to the Lord your God. You shall not bring the money of a Kadesh into the house of the Lord. So what does that mean? Go to Deuteronomy 23, verse 18. I just read that. Yeah. Oh, I was supposed to read... No, I'm good. 1 Kings 14. 1 Kings 14. 24. 14:24. And there were also Kadeshim in the land. Now mine translates it male cult prostitutes. That's a good translation. Trannies downtown who pick up guys and slit their throat. Male cult prostitutes. They did according to all the abominations of the Goyim, the Gentiles, which the Lord dispossessed. That's why the Lord dispossessed them before the sons of Israel. That's why God killed off all the Gentiles that were doing this stuff. And you, Israel, are now doing it. You shall not do this. You shall not bring the money of a Kadesh into the house of the Lord, and you shall not have Kadeshim in the house of the Lord, period. Don't let there be any Kadeshim in the house of the Lord. Male cult prostitute is a good translation. 1 Kings 15, verse 21. What? That's not it. Wrong chapter. Oh, 2 Kings. I can't see it. No? 1 Kings. I put the wrong verse there. This is about the king who put away all the Kadeshim out of the house. Maybe it's 2 Kings, I'm not sure. Anyway. What, 15:12? Yeah. Okay, thank you, honey. 15:12. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah? Okay. Yeah, that's it. So this is Asa. He also put away the Kadeshim from the land and removed all the idols which his fathers had made. So there are Kadeshim in the house of the Lord. When they went to Kadesh, and they were stuck there in Kadesh for 38 years, they had with them Molech, the little house of Molech, and the Sukkah, the little house of Kiyum, or Saturn. And they had these demons with them along with the tabernacle. And that just got bigger when they took the land. They had the temple along with the Kadeshim, the male cult prostitutes. You with me? Yep. Yes. 2 Kings 23. Now you're going to see those houses that got bigger. 2 Kings 23:7. He also broke down the houses of the Kadeshim. Now this says Beit HaKadeshim, Batei HaKadeshim, which means houses of the Kadeshim. And look where they are, which were in the house of the Lord. These little houses, these booths were in the temple. And they would go in there and they'd invite their brothers and say, would you care to have a little libation and perhaps a little action? And they do this in the house of the Lord. Baruch Hashem, let's get it on, baby.
Was that in the temple?
They were doing the ways of the Gentiles.
In the temple.
In the temple. This was talking about in the temple. When we're in 2 Kings, as deep into it as we are, chapter 23, we're already almost to the end of the time of the temple in Judah. Before the first temple. Yeah. No. This is the second temple. Not the temple. Not the second temple. First temple. Yeah. First temple. And they're almost going to be taken away by Babylon. This is the first temple, Solomon's temple. Yeah.
No wonder.
Now, it morphed into the other nations doing the same thing. And it really exploded under Hellenism. So much so, I'm going to say this, I said it last week and I said it last year twice. I'm going to say it again. So much so that in Hellenism, please hear me, homosexuality was the norm. So don't be freaked out that priests have fun with little boys. It's the norm in Hellenism. When I say priests, I mean, Catholic priests. I don't mean Jewish priests. Don't be freaked out by it. It's the norm. This is the ultimate, how can I say it? It's not the ultimate sin. It's not. What's the ultimate sin? Unbelief. So that people can't see the kingdom. But what I believe, and this is just my opinion, that mixing homosexuality with religion is the one thing that will close people's eyes to the kingdom faster than anything and lead to unbelief. That's what I believe. And I believe it from these verses that I've just showed you.
Because it sidetracks.
It sidetracks them, but what it does ultimately is it takes that field of Israel, of Judaism, that vineyard, and throws a bunch of foreign seed into it so that then all the generations after that cannot see the kingdom through Judaism and cannot see Yeshua through Judaism.
Because
It's bad. Yeah, cross-pollinates, and you're not supposed to have that. All right, so we have this horrible, horrible place called Kadesh. Now, we're going to talk about its other names. SELA and Petra. Petra. SELA and Petra. Let's talk about SELA. Let's go to Judges chapter 1. And this is talking about the boundaries of the land of Israel. Very beginning of Judges, which is basically the end of Joshua. Same time period. And in chapter 1, verse 36, it talks about the southern border. There is no 136. Oh, I'm in Joshua. Every time that fan hits, it changes my pages. Judges 136. What it says is this, verse 35. The Amorites persisted in living in Mount Sinai, in Ayalon, Shaalbim. But when the hand of the house of Joseph grew strong, they became forced labor. And the border of the Amorites, now look on the map here, the border of the Amorites, which is just above Edom and below Moab, on the other side of the Jordan. The border of the Amorites, they were horrible, horrible people, ran from the ascent of the scorpion, ascent of Akrabim, of scorpions, from SELA and upward. Now, in other passages, it says that the border of Israel ran from Edom at Kadesh. and upward. So we know that Kadesh equals SELA, right? SELA.
Is that what they mean when they say SELA?
No, like in the Psalms, there are 10 Psalms that say SELA. Actually, there's more than that. That's right, there's a lot more than that. Let's say SELA. Different word. This is SELA. The rock is SELA. And in the Psalms, it's SELA. Now, why did they name Kadesh SELA? By the time you get to the book of Judges, the beginning of the book of Judges, they've already named this place that they spent 38 years in, they've already named it SELA. So why'd they name it SELA? Some of the translations say from the rock and upward, where it says SELA, because it says Ha-SELA. The rock, the SELA. So why did they name Kadesh the rock? Why did they name it the rock?
They forced the tribe of Dan into the rock.
No, tribe of Dan is way, way, way up north. You're nowhere near there. Why did they name Kadesh the rock? Nobody remembers? There you go. The rock, well, it wasn't split. The rock that had water come out of it. Remember, at Kadesh Barnea, at Meribat Kadesh, Moses hit the rock twice, and water poured down like a waterfall, it says, and he was forbidden to go into the land. That happened at Kadesh, Meribat Kadesh. Well, what did he strike? A SELA. Specifically a SELA. I did this teaching last year during next week's Torah portion. And I'm just going to review these. Numbers 19:8 says, God says to him, V'dibartem el hasela, speak to the rock. And then in that same verse it says, V'hotzeta min hasela, and out of the rock, the Selah, will come water. And then in Numbers 19:10 it says, Hakahal el pnei hasela, the congregation came to the face of the rock, the Selah. And then it says, same verse, Hamin hasela hazeh, from this rock. Moses is yelling at him, are we supposed to bring water for you out of hasela hazeh, this rock, this Selah? And then in Nehemiah chapter 9 verse 19, chapter 19 verse 11, the next verse it says, and he struck the Selah, v'yach et hasela, he struck the Selah. And then in Nehemiah 9:15 it says, umayim misela hotzeta, water from the Selah, water from the rock came out. Now these are only mentioned, it's only mentioning the rock at Kadesh, not the rock at Mount Sinai. Because remember, there's two Meribahs. There's the Meribah down at Mount Sinai, at Rephidim, and then there's the Meribah Kadesh, at Kadesh. 2 times the rock was hit. And who is that rock? Yeshua, it says in 1 Corinthians 10, and it followed them from Sinai up to Kadesh. I'm not sure what that means, but that's a picture. So, only the rock at Kadesh was called Selah. And we know this because there's only 2 verses that talk about the one down in Mount Sinai. In Exodus 17:6 and in Deuteronomy 8:15. They're describing this rock, this big, giant rock that was cleft. And the river of water came out. And that says in Hebrew, Al Hatzur B'Chorev, on the rock at Horeb. This is a different word for rock. It's the word sur. Sur. Different word from Selah. And then the same verse, it says, V'hakit hatzur, and you, hakit, strike the tzur, strike the rock. And then water came out. This is at Mount Sinai. And then Deuteronomy 8:15, he says, Hamotzi mayim mitzur, brought forth water from the tzur. So, the rock down in the south, at Mount Sinai, what is it called? Come on. Goodness. Wow. That's, I think I'm going to quit. I just showed you. the big giant rock that down in the south at Mount Sinai is called what in Hebrew? No. Shur. Say it. The rock up at Kadesh is called what? Say it together. SELA. This is the only way you're going to learn. Or else your mind's going to veg and you're going to go somewhere else and it ain't going to work. What's the rock up in the north in Kadesh called?
SELA.
What's the rock down in the south at Mount Sinai called?
Shur.
One more time. What's the rock down in the south called?
Shur.
What's the rock up in the north called?
SELA.
SELA. That's why they named it SELA. That's why they named Kadesh SELA. Because that's what happened there. God made water come out of the SELA. Hard, flint-like, shiny, like obsidian or flint. Alrighty. Now, SELA means rock. Yeah. Oh, actually, I see what you're saying. Like what kind of rock? Like this. High. Comes from the word high. High rock. Good question. Good class participation. All right. Now, let's talk about the next. Let's talk about the next thing that was called Petra. You're not going to believe what I tell you. I want you to check me. The Nabateans built all the amazing things, and this is freaky to me. Just this week, on Tuesday or Wednesday, National Geographic had this amazing film about Petra. And they had drones flying over all of Petra, and it is nothing like I thought. It's a huge, huge city. And the people who built this huge city, and by the way, it's more spectacular than Masada, which Herod built. The people that built this at the same time, actually before Masada was built, the same time that Yeshua was alive. And before the time that Yeshua was alive. It went on for several decades. And they started before the first century, before the time of Yeshua. They were called the Nabateans. And guess what? The guy who built the city is in the Bible. He's in the New Testament. I couldn't believe it. I want you to check me. We're going to go through it. All right, so now the next thing that it's called is Petra. This was named Petra, which guess what Petra means?
Rock.
Right. All it is the Greek for SELA.
Right.
That's all it is. Petra is SELA. A high rock. Like Peter. Right. Wadi Musa is the huge valley. There's two names for the huge valleys in the wilderness of Paran nowadays. One is called Wadi Musa. Wadi means an arroyo or a valley. Wadi Musa. Guess what Musa means? Moses. The valley of Moses. Why? Because they were at Kadesh for 40 years. It's called Wadi Musa and Wadi Rum, which means high. Wadi, the high valley, which is weird. And it is dramatic. You have an iron pan flat sand valley and then a giant mountain that just juts right up. And the mountains just go on and on and on and on, layered for miles. And it's within those mountains that Petra was built. This is a guy overlooking the city, downtown of the city of Petra. In this National Geographic thing I saw, I just thank God that God showed me that this week. It's, what are the odds? It's amazing. There's all these drones flying over, and they said, I'm sure you've seen pictures of Petra, right? With the big, giant, beautiful, it's cut out of the stone. It's a treasury. I can't remember what it's called in Arabic. But it's a treasury, and it's huge. It's, it's a 60-foot tall face that looks very Greek.
Giants?
No. Nabateans. And it's It's gorgeous. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. There's 3 or 4 of those. No. You know how many there are? 1,200. 1,200 beautiful dwellings and colonnades and walkways and covered patios are in the city of Petra. It's huge, huge, huge. That's got to be our next trip. I got to go see Petra. It's enormous. It's like going downtown New York City. It just goes on for miles and miles and miles. Well, there is a downtown central, this huge valley here, and this guy is overlooking it, and it's completely surrounded by huge cliff-faced mountains. That's what it looks like. Just, flat and then poof, walls of mountain. This is a different view of the same Wadi Rum. Here's Bedouin tents, and there's that same mountain from a different view. And right behind that mountain, Petra. Ancient day Petra. Look at this. Now we saw one of the things, nothing good happened in Kadesh, in SELA, right? Just bad after bad after bad after bad. The very last bad thing was the death of Aaron. And it says that they left Kadesh and they went to their very first camp, which was Mount Hor. And that's where Aaron died. You can see it from the Nabatean altar in Petra. This is a dude sitting on the Nabatean altar, one of the many, many, many Nabatean altars in Petra, and way, right there's a little tiny dome of Aaron's tomb on Mount Hor. So you could throw, well, if you had a really good arm, you could throw a football over that mountain and hit that tomb of the tomb of Aaron. It's right there, within an eye shot. So, Wadi Musa means Valley of Moses in Arabic. It's said that the prophet Moses passed through the valley and struck water from the what? In Hebrew? SELA, for his followers at the site of Ein Musa. Now, Ein means waters or spring of Moses. Moses as well. The Nabateans built channels that carried water. Now, when it says channels, it means aqueducts, like Rome did. And this was before Rome did aqueducts. The Nabateans built aqueducts from Ein Musa, from the, where the water came down for Moses, out of the rock for Israel, to the town of Petra, to the city of Petra. Wadi Musa was also nicknamed the guardian of Petra. The tomb of Aaron, the burial site of the biblical Aaron, the brother of Moses, is on nearby Mount Hor. You can see it. I want to see it with my own eyes. This is ridiculous. That's carved 100 feet tall into the mountain. Look how straight that line is. And there's huge edifices carved in the rock here, huge edifices carved in the rock here, and there's 1,000 more. This is that one that everybody, goes gaga about. Did you see the movie? Yeah, but which one? Here's the one where the
Last Crusade.
No, yeah. The one where he has, the Last Crusade. Yeah, the one where he has he's looking for the chalice, the Holy Grail. Yeah, ridiculous. Well, anyway, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Thank you. Did you see that movie?
Yeah.
They come through that narrow little gorge up to this huge mountain. The treasury carved into the mountain face. You can barely see the gorge here. Guess what that gorge is called?
Valley of Moses.
Yeah, Wadi Musa. That little gorge is also called Wadi Musa. That little approach, and it's like a hidden approach to this part of the city. But don't think that's the city. It's not. It's just one other building of 1,200. Look at this. This freaked me out. Look how straight those columns and pillars and walls are. Look at these columns. Look at these stairs. It looks like Rome, doesn't it? I think it looks very much like Rome. Yes, ma'am.
It's one of the 7 wonders of the world.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
It's one of the 7 wonders of the world. I didn't know that.
And it's also called the Pink City. Because
Yes, it's called the Pink City. Yes, when the sun hits it, it turns rose color. Look at, guys, look at this. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see this? That's a fallen pillar made out of many, many giant washers. Giant circles with a hole in the middle. And it just fell over, and you can see that those slabs are this big. And they're this thick. And there's 100 of them to create this giant pillar. And they're just falling over. Look how straight those lines are. Look at this. And that's, you know what that is? That's a street. This is a street. And this is a wall next to the sidewalk of the street. With huge, huge, huge pillars all along it. 50, 60 feet tall pillars. And everything is perfect. The guy who did this, he's in the Bible. This doesn't excite you, but oh well. What are you going to do? It lit me up. Preach, boy. Yes, sir. Okay. Now, the ultimate story of SELA brings us to the day of the Lord. 1 Samuel 25:1. Guess what? David went to SELA. Yep. Why would he go to the other side of the Jordan? No, not because he was running away from Saul. When he was running away from Saul, he went to En-Gedi. He went to the wilderness of Ziph, which is inside the borders of Israel. He went to the wilderness of Maon, which is inside the borders of Israel. And he went to another wilderness, I can't remember the name, which is inside the borders of Israel. But this is different. This is outside the border of Israel. 1 Samuel 25. When Samuel died, and all of Israel was gathered together and mourned for him, and buried him in his house in Ramah, and David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. There it is. What city is in the wilderness of Paran? Yeah. Why would David go down to Kadesh? And he's not hiding from Saul. This is a picture. This is a picture of the Jews fleeing to Kadesh. They're not running from some anointed evil king, which I would think would be the case, but it's not. Samuel has died. Samuel has died. The eyes and ears of God is gone from Israel. And as soon as that happens, as soon as revelation has been taken away from Israel, David goes across the border to Kadesh, where all the bad stuff happened. Now I want you to picture this. This is what I want you to picture. I want you to picture a big city. I don't want you to picture, he's in the desert, he's by himself, and he has a pup tent. It's not like that. He went to the place that had been built way up since Moses' time. It's a big city. And he went there as a picture of the Jews, all of Israel. When revelation has been taken away from Israel, they go. They flee to what? Petra, Paran. Keep talking. SELA. How about this? What? Mountains. Let me say it again. As soon as the revelation, the eyesight, the ears of hearing God, and God's presence being there is dead, flee to the mountains. So that's what you're going to see. Now go to Galatians chapter 1. Yes. Galatians chapter 1. Paul did the same thing. Paul did the same thing. And nobody knows why. I read 15 commentaries. Nobody knows why he went. Right after he got born again. And I think the reason is that it was right after he got born again. Galatians chapter 1, verse 16. To reveal his Son in me, that I might preach him among the Goyim. I did not immediately consult with flesh and blood. So what it's talking about is he just got saved. He just got born again, and he didn't immediately go consult with a bunch of teachers and rabbis. Nor did I go up to Jerusalem to those who were apostles before me, but I went away to Arabia. Right? There's only two possibilities of where he could go. What are they? Petra or SELA or what? Say it loud. SELA, Petra or? No, that's the same place. Petra, SELA, Kadesh, or what else is in Arabia? Thank you. Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is in Arabia. So those are the only two possibilities. I'm going to say, you don't have to believe me, that he immediately when he got born again went into Petra, Kadesh. Because that's exactly what's going to happen with the whole of the Jewish people in the Birthpangs. They're going to get born again and immediately flee. I can't even tell you the date. Immediately flee to Petra, to SELA, to Kadesh, so that God can redeem them. Got it? Now, the only other verses about SELA is Isaiah 16, which says, send the tribute lamb, it says send the lamb to the mountains of Zion from SELA. And then it says, hide the outcasts and fugitives. Let's go to Isaiah 16. And I was so hoping to get through this faster. Send the lamb to the ruler of the land from SELA, or Kadesh, or Petra, by way of the wilderness. Which wilderness? Which wilderness? Which wilderness? Paran, to the mountain of the daughter of Zion. Then, like fleeing birds or scattered nestlings, the daughter, in other words, flying. The daughters of Moab will be at the fords of the Arnon. Give us advice, make a decision, cast your shadow like night at high noon. Hide the outcasts. Hide the outcasts. Do not betray the fugitive who flew into the wilderness in this verse. Who? Wow. This is why it's taking long. You got to pay attention to get this. Send the lamb to the ruler of the land from SELA, by way of the wilderness of Paran to the mountain of the daughter of Zion. Then, like fleeing birds, or scattered nestlings, birds flying, the daughters of Moab will be at the fords of the Arnon. Give advice, make a decision, cast your shadow like night at high noon, hide the outcasts, don't betray the fugitive. Let the outcasts of Moab stay with you, be a hiding place for them from the destroyer. Who are the outcasts that are hiding? The Moabites and the daughters of Zion. The daughters of Zion. You've got two peoples here. You have Zion, the people of Zion, and Moab. And they fly into what? Fly into what? It doesn't say Petra. What does it say they fly into? It doesn't say SELA. What does it say they fly into? Thank you. Wilderness. Wilderness of Paran. Okay. Now in Daniel 11, 41, it's talking about the false Messiah. It's talking about the false Messiah already from verse 30 or so. And then it says in 41, he will enter, he being the false Messiah, will enter the beautiful land. What's the beautiful land? Israel. And many will fall, but these will be rescued out of his hand. Edom, which is where Petra is, Moab, and the foremost of the sons of Ammon. Those will be saved out of the false Messiah's hand. Look, Edom, Moab, and Ammon is over here. Will be saved from them. These are the peoples of the other side of the desert, the other side of the river, where Israel's going to flee to. But Moabites and Ammonites and Edomites are also going to join them. This is the mixed multitude. Basically, Gentiles. I'll go so far as to call them Christians.
There you go.
There you go.
Be honest about it.
Well, they're with the Jews. They are with the Jews. And they're hidden from the destroyer. Now, Isaiah 42. Verse 10. Sing to the Lord a new song. Sing his praise from the end of the earth, you who go down to the sea and all that is in it. You islands. Islands are Gentiles. And those who dwell on them. Let the wilderness and its... Whoa, what? The wilderness and its cities? Do you picture cities in a wilderness? No, you picture Bedouin tents or something. You don't picture cities. This is the wilderness. It's Petra. It's the wilderness with cities in it. Huge. Let the wilderness of Paran and its cities lift up their voices. The settlements were Kedar inhabitants. That is Edom and Midian. Let the inhabitants of SELA, Petra, sing aloud. Let them shout for joy from the tops of the mountains. How did they get to the tops of the mountains? They fled there. They fled there. Now, I told you before, as soon as the voice of God is gone, immediately the righteous flee. David, and immediately when he was born again, Paul fled or went to Arabia, specifically to Petra, in my opinion. Wilderness of Paran with David. So I don't think it's so much opinion as pretty verifiable. Matthew 24. You think you know this passage, but you don't. Most probably. Matthew 24, 15 and 16. It says this. As soon as the abomination of desolation happens. When is that?
The destruction of the temple.
I said when. Tell me when. When is that?
78.
When the abomination of desolation will happen. Tell me when that is. Not 6,000 more. Wow. Okay, that's okay. I got a graph to show you. I thought you knew this. I put it on here in case you didn't remember. The birth pangs are divided in half. 3.5 years before, 3.5 years after. What's the dividing line? What's the dividing line? What event? What's the event? The abomination of desolation. That's the midpoint. That's the dividing line. That's the signal that God's voice is gone. The tabernacle is gone. The testimony is gone. The temple has been desolated. And there's an idol on the altar, and the false Messiah has stopped the sacrifices, And God is gone. And then it says, the very next verse, verse 16, then let those who are in Judah flee to the mountains. Immediately, when God's voice disappears in the birthpangs, get out and go to the mountains. Mark 13, 14 through 15 says exactly the same words. Exactly the same thing. In Revelation 12, verses 5 and 6, we looked at this last week. Revelation 12, you are in the day of the Lord, you are in the birthpangs, if you're reading in the book of Revelation. So you're already in the day of the Lord. And in verse 12, before we read this, let's do it again. The birthpangs last 7 years, yes? What's the midpoint? What event? Abomination of desolation. Okay? As soon as that occurs, the Jews flee to the mountains. So
That's when they're going to be redeemed.
So picture David. Samuel's gone, and he immediately flees to the wilderness of Paran. But at the same time, you have Paul. What happened that he immediately fled to Arabia? What happened to him? He was born again. He was born again. And that's exactly what's going to happen to Israel. In the year 6004, in the middle of the birthpangs, at the abomination of desolation, all of Israel is going to get born again. Quote, and all Israel shall be saved. There's only one verse that says that in the whole New Testament. Yeah, in Romans chapter 11. Thank you, verse 24. And that's going to be at the abomination of desolation. It's what's going to cause the Jews to be born again. All right, so let's read chapter 12, verse 14 through 16. There is no 12. 14 through, oh yeah. See, it's that fan. 14 through 16. Well, verse 13. When the dragon saw that he was thrown down to the earth, this hasn't happened yet. There has been no war in heaven between Michael and the archangels and Hasatan. This has not occurred yet. 2/3 of the angels have not been thrown down to the earth yet. This has not happened. It happens at the abomination of desolation. That's when it happens. And immediately, when the dragon saw that he was thrown down, there's other verses that say this too. He was thrown down to the earth. He persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. The male child being the Messiah, and the woman is Israel. And she gave birth. That's why it's called the birthpangs. So it's at the abomination of desolation that Israel goes into birthpangs and are born again. And they immediately flee to the wilderness. And that's what it says here. Verse 14. And the 2 wings of the great eagle were given to the woman. Where does it say that in the prophets? That Israel was given wings to fly away to the wilderness? No, we just read it. Isaiah what? It's a big book. You don't remember. Isaiah 14. Wasn't it? 42:10 was it? Whoop. Went the wrong way. Oh, what is it? Isaiah 42. It said that they were given wings to fly. Moab was given wings to fly along with the Jews into the wilderness. The 2 wings of the great eagle were given to the woman in order that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, where she was nourished for times and half a time from the presence of the serpent. Now look at this. And the serpent poured water like a river out of his mouth after the woman, so that he might cause her to be swept away with the flood. And the earth opened up and swallowed every bit of that flood, including what belonged to them. Just like Korach. Where did Korach's rebellion take place? Kadesh, Petra, SELA. Same thing's going to be repeated. This all happened as a picture. That took me an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes, but I brought it all the way back around. Korach's rebellion took place at Kadesh, and the earth opened up and swallowed everything of that rebellion. And the same thing's going to happen again in the Birthpangs. The Jewish people go into Birthpangs, give birth to the Messiah. In other words, they're born again. They flee immediately to SELA, to Petra, to Kadesh, and the false Messiah sends his warfare against them, and they all get swallowed up. Because the earth opens up and swallows them. Just like, isn't that amazing? Wow. Same exact place, same exact event is going to happen. Oh, it was Isaiah 16 that they were given the wings? Thank you. Thank you. All right. Revelation 12, 14 through 16, it says that there, the earth opens up and swallows it. Now look at verse 17 right after that. And the dragon was enraged with the woman. Who's the woman? Israel. And went off to make war with the rest of her seed, who keep the mitzvot and the testimony of Yeshua. These are believers. These are Messianic Jews and Messianic Gentiles who know the Messiah and who do Judaism, the mitzvot. Something's got to change. Because if the kingdom and the birth pangs started right now, how many, quote, Christians would fit into that verse? Zero. Because they do, no, that's not true. Because they do the mitzvot and they hold the testimony of Yeshua.
Well, you got a heads up in California. Not very many.
Think about it. Something's got to change.
There's a bunch that
All right. So here's a graph for you in case you had a problem following that. 1,260 days, it says in Daniel chapter 7, is the first part of the birth pangs. What is this line right here? What is the event in the middle of the birth pangs? Abomination of desolation, and then 1,260 days for the second half of the birth pangs. This is in Daniel chapter 7 and Revelation chapter 12. Same thing. And then Daniel 12 says 3.5 years until the false Messiah ends his war against the holy ones. But guess what word it uses? Kadeshim. Kadesh is good and Kadesh is bad. And here's what I would submit to you. That God called them Kadeshim for a reason. Because the ultimate picture of unbelief is Kadesh, is in Kadesh. And they're set apart for the purposes of Hasatan, with homosexuality, mixing with religion, mixing with God, mixing homosexuality and sodomy with God. And it closes people's eyes to the kingdom. They're only called that up to here. And then the birth pangs takes place. I mean, the abomination of desolation takes place, and they're born again. And now they're called Kadeshim for a different reason. They're Kadesh. They're holy. Because in Daniel 12, 5 through 7, it says 3.5 years, times and a half a time, from the abomination of desolation to the time that he ends his war. The false Messiah ends his warfare against the Kadeshim, the holy ones. Now they're truly holy because they're born again. It's Israel, and they're born again. And they're Kadeshim, but it's okay. They can be called Kadeshim. So this is what I am seeing in this. That it's not arbitrary to call male temple prostitutes, Kadeshim. And it's not to confuse us. It's to drive our mind toward the place called Kadesh, where they had these houses where they would commit homosexual acts for Yahweh. and for Kiyun, and for Moab. I can't remember the other one. Moab and Kiyun, and there's another one. Ramphah, thank you, Ramphah. Jupiter and Saturn and Yahweh, just another god to have sex for. And that is going to be driven out of God's temple right here at the end of the Birthpangs. That war goes on for 3.5 years. And believe me, it's going to be a war. They're going to hunt down believers. They're going to hunt us down in the kingdom. In the Birthpangs. They're going to hunt down believers and murder them. I mean, just like ISIS does. Only multiply that by 100. Take Hitler, mix him with ISIS, and that's a pretty good picture. And you're worried about money? We need to get our mind on the kingdom, not money. I've said this for 40 years, and once in a while somebody hears me. Once in a while. You need to get your mind off money and get it on the kingdom, and learn the kingdom, and know the kingdom. And you need to know it backwards and forwards, because Yeshua went everywhere preaching the kingdom, and they still didn't get it. We need to know the kingdom. You need to get your mind on the kingdom. I don't know that we're going to be in the Birthpangs. I don't think we will. I mean, I'm talking about this generation. I don't think the day of the Lord is coming for several years. Longer than most people believe. But whether it does or it doesn't, I know this. You need to know, and you need to be able to picture in your head these narratives in order to know the Bible. Or else why are you reading the Bible?
Right.
Just to make yourself feel good? We're supposed to be learning this book so that we can know the kingdom, so we can know God. And we can be known by God. I mean, you might know God, but how well do you know Him? I mean, I want to know Him really, really good. I want there to be no question. I mean, like I told you last week, it makes me really, really, really mad that I told people they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. Said this for 40 years, just about. I've been a believer 40 years, 41 years. And for about 40 years, I've been saying, Jews wandered for 40 years in the wilderness. There's only one verse that says that, and it's at the end of the book of Numbers, after he's already told the whole narrative. So we need to know this book. We need to know our enemy, false Messiah. We need to know when this stuff happens. We need to know the dates that they happen, and we need to be able to know what we believe. Yes? Make sense? That's why we're doing this. Let's pray. Thank you, Abba, for your word. Thank you for your spirit that are one. Your Torah and your spirit are one. And I ask that you would reveal mysteries of your word, in your word to us, by your spirit, through the hand of Moses. Al pi Adonai, from the mouth of the Lord, Bayad Moshe, by the hand of Moses, by the hand of the Torah. I ask that you mix those two things together for us more and more, Abba, in the name of Yeshua. Thank you, Lord. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.